always having a sense of love for the people, the things, life, all of it. I think that could heal a lot of things in this world, almost everything. If every person just loved one person a little more, like our world would be different.
This is about humans dreaming together.
About humans supporting each other on our journeys.
It's about the science and the art behind making our dream lives a reality.
To the students of life,
the young and the curious,
the dreamers and the doers,
to those who crave to be a strong individual
and want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Welcome.
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 Welcome to the Dreamology podcast. What's going on, everybody? It's your host, Tim Bishop, back with another episode of the Dreamology podcast. Remember, we are here because in school we didn't learn about how to make our dream lives a reality, and so here we are studying how to do that, and we are making sure that we're all making daily progress towards our dream lives. For me, it's been a little bit over 18 months since I made the conscious decision to try to make my dream life a reality. And in that process, I am trying to grow, to transform, to connect, to love, to contribute, and to really just see what the best life looks like for me. And I want to help others do the same. And these conversations are a way that I can do that. And so I'm really excited to introduce today's guest. Let's get to it. Today's guest is Amanda Beilke. Amanda is a life design coach, and life design is this concept of really designing each element and important part of your life in the way you want it and figuring out what that looks like and how do you get it. And so Amanda shares with us her insights on how people go about making change in their life and how they go about designing the certain parts of their day to make them fulfilled, happy, and live a life that they consider to be successful. And so in this interview, we talk about things like how to let your values guide you, about purpose, about love, and really all the good, important topics of life. And so here's the interview with Amanda Beilke. I hope you enjoy it. Amanda, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, Tim. It's so great to connect with you and to be here today.
Well, good. I'm excited that you are excited. Well, I feel like we got to start with a life design coach. I think you have to give us a definition of what that is before we dive into the more finer details of the conversation.
Yeah, so just as some, background for everyone that has either heard the term life coach or life design coach, or if you haven't before, I really view it as I work with clients to understand where are they right now and help create a plan to get them to where they want to be. So that's through different questions and tools to really identify what that vision is of where they want to be and the accountability to get there. So where a lot of people get hung up is they don't know what that vision is. They don't know what they want. They don't know what that looks like. So it's designing that together to give them the tools, resources to really take that to the next level and dive in deeper to be like, this is how I want to design it. This is how I'm going to design my life to really align with what that greater vision is. So when you think about all the different areas, it's like, okay, what do I want? I call it the wheel of life. So what do I want to design with my family? What do I want to design with my friends? What do I want to design with my career? What do I want to design around my health, around spirituality, finances, all of that good stuff.
Okay, sweet, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about like some of the core elements, but you just mentioned some of them. So when you're like, you don't limit yourself to certain elements of I guess the life as a whole. You're diving into all, it sounds like I mean, you said family, friends, career, spirituality. Is it kind of just based off of what that person, like you feel like that person needs, or do you have a general framework of like certain like buckets that you cover with everyone?
That's a great question. So it really varies by person. So I would say is every person I work with comes to me for the majority thinking that their problem is one thing or they're stuck in one area of their life. And what they say they're stuck in is never the problem. So for instance, I've had people that have come to me thinking, maybe it's more around health or, maybe it's working out, maybe it's diet, maybe it's something in that realm where they're like, oh, I need some accountability. I want to get my health back on track. And really it ends up being something along the lines of, well, my relationship with my significant other isn't where I want it to be. And I don't feel loved. I don't feel valued. I don't feel connected in this relationship. And they use something else to mask what the deeper problem is. So it's like an onion, and really peeling back all the different layers to get to what the root of the issue is.
Building some self-awareness on the issues. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense if you think about it, just like in a logical way of, like a lot of times we miscalculate what's actually going on in our life, and it takes someone else to be like, hey, well, what about this? That was the other thing. Cool.
It's having, someone from an outside perspective look in and just be there to ask that question, to have the unbiased approach and ask what's going on in a certain area. And that's where whatever they respond with, that gives me the, like, yes, like peel another layer, there's something else here. Or it's a no, and it's redirect, like what else is it? So everything that a client tells me gives me more information as to where they're really being held back and what's really going on. So, yeah.
Cool. Sweet. And I saw something on your website that I wanted to bring up because it just seemed like an awesome statement. And it was, so the wording here was basically like, you guide people, encourage them, hold them accountable in order to create a life they fall madly in love with. And then you had your very own love story.
Yeah.
I love that. I thought that was awesome because, I mean, yeah, to your point, the goal of this is to create a life that you fall madly in love with, not just, that you feel like is okay.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like when you start that process, right? Someone's like, I want to build a life I'm madly in love with. Like, how do you, what's the first conversation, and what's the first steps that you're taking with these people to make this or help them identify what this life is for themselves?
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what you said in that last question about, what are the elements of designing your life, and how it's, the surface level problem is never the problem. It's also thinking about when you fall in love with your life, you have to fall in love with yourself first. And in order to do that, you have to understand who you are, what you love about yourself, what your strengths are, what you value about who you are. And so when you think about it, it's really that self-work, because in order to have an extraordinary relationship with anyone else, that every relationship you have is really set upon that relationship you have with yourself. Like, you can't physically love someone more than you love yourself, because the amount of love that you have for yourself is the only level that you know. And therefore, that's the only level that you can give out to someone else. And so when you take the time to really dive into who you are and what you love about you, then you gain that clarity to understand, okay, so if these are my strengths, if these are my values, then I want to design my life in that way. Or then I want to create stronger relationships with these types of people, or I want to go after a different career. And when you then align everything with who you are and what you value, that's when you fall in love with your life.
Wow, I've never heard it phrased like that before, and I really liked that. When you said the amount of love you have for yourself is the amount you can give to others, because that's all you know. I've never heard, I was like, wow, that's super profound. It makes sense.
I will tell you that the first time I heard it, I didn't believe it. The first time, I don't know if I came across it in a book or where it was that I first heard it. And this was many years ago. I was like, that's not possible. I love other people a lot, like my family, my friends, like whoever it might be. And then the more I dove into it, I was like, whoa. Like, same kind of reaction you had. It's like, that is so true. Like, because you don't know a deeper level. So then you can't get to that deeper level with someone else when you don't know it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned values in there too. And, I've heard about this as a point of conversation and coaching conversations, and even as a general good way to guide your life in some way, but why is it so important for you? Like, why do you think it's so important for people to understand kind of their values, and what does it do for people to identify and like see, like, these are my values? Like, what does that do for a person?
Values are everything. So I would say when you know your values and you make decisions aligned with your values, that's what gives you potent clarity. So that's when you aren't going, some people may struggle with analysis paralysis. We're like, do I do this? Do I do that? And then before you know it, they waste hours or days trying to make a decision. But when you know your values, then you use that as guideposts. So does this decision align with these values that I have? And if it does, then it makes it, or if it doesn't, it makes it a really clear decision. And it helps eliminate that guilt that many people have when it's maybe not the people-pleasing decision, but it's the right decision for you. And when you have your values to back that up, that helps eliminate the guilt there. And every decision, your decisions create your destiny. So the direction of the life that you go in is all shaped by every decision you make. So when you can make those decisions with clarity, that changes everything.
Right. So how would someone go about, like, what would be a first step in identifying some of those values? Like, there's many different ways to do it, but what's a good, framework for someone listening to say, hey, this is a good place to start, I guess?
Yeah. There are many different ways to go about it. There are two separate things. So have you ever heard of Danielle Laporte at all?
I haven't.
Okay, so she is a best-selling author. She has this book called The Desire Map, and that helps you understand what your core desired feelings are. So it's a little different than values, but it helps you understand how you want to feel every day, and then you make decisions based off of how you want to feel, because every goal that you have, every decision you make is based off a certain feeling that you want to have when you really peel back the layers there. So that's one step, is you could go through the desire map process. And that's brilliant. I love that. Another step is really just thinking about, okay, what are the things that I really enjoy? What are the things I love doing? What are the things that I lose sense of time doing? And you can make a list of all those things. You can make a list of where are you spending all your money? So you could literally go back to your bank account statements and look at, okay, this is where I spend the majority of my money. Is it on certain experiences, on certain people? Is it certain activities? So looking at that. And then it's also thinking about what either TV shows, movies, or books do you read? So those three lists. So it's the things you enjoy doing that you lose sense of time over. It's where's your money going? And then it's what TVs, movies, or books do you read? And then what are the commonalities between those three? And when you get an idea of those, that helps you understand the things that have heart and meaning to you, which in a sense is your values, the things that have meaning.
Yeah. So it's analyzing basically just the different things you do, spend money on, the content you're consuming, and start to see the connection between it all.
Yeah. So
Cool.
It's just 3 lists, and what are the things that show up in each of the 3 lists? What commonalities can you draw out?
Yeah.
Because maybe it's certain people that you're always spending, the things that you spend money on, those activities or whatever it is. Maybe it's with the same people that you always do it, because those are the people you enjoy being with. So whether it's family or friends or significant other, or it maybe with a TV show or a movie, there's a certain character or a certain type of character that's in all of them that you are really drawn to, or whatever it would be.
Yeah. Interesting. So when someone, let's say I have my values identified and now it's, a couple months down the road, how do I use those to continue living an authentic life to those? Do you just check in on them, or, if they're this guiding tool, what do you encourage people to do? Hang them up on your wall? How do I use them in a practical sense to then make sure, remind myself of them on a daily or weekly or however long basis?
Okay, that's a brilliant question, but I'm going to back up a second, because one thing I didn't mention about values, which I don't know how I didn't mention this, your personality type. So you have to dive into who you are, personality types, whether you take the Myers-Briggs, the Enneagram, or taking StrengthsFinder. Those are all brilliant ways of really diving in deeper to who you are, what you value, how you act, your personality at its core. So that's another great tool to use to figure out your values. But then, how do you stay connected to them, right? How do you live in alignment with them? For me, it's reviewing them every day. I have that as part of my morning routine. For some clients, maybe they've done it where they set reminders on their phone certain times throughout the day, or maybe it's sending a calendar reminder that you just have on your computer or in your planner where you just write them out. And I've also done this, I don't do this anymore, but in the past I've done it where, okay, for each one of my values, and I did it with my values and my strengths, I wrote out every morning how I was going to use that value, or how I was going to use that strength, or how I was going to connect with it that day. So that just helps you to set the intention for the day.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of options, just kind of whatever works for you and your given time frame. It's something that's going to like constantly remind you of them and basically keep them at the forefront of your attention.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. And for some people, maybe it's like, when I hear this song or when I read this quote, this reminds me of like encompasses all my values in total. So for some people, it might just be like having a quote up, or having a song they listen to in the car on their way to work, or whatever it might be.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And so it's, I would assume a big part of the alignment conversation would steer a little bit into career at points, depending on the client. But, as I reflect on me diving into my adult life and my career right now, thinking about, well, that's a huge part of your life. And I would love for that, my career to be aligned with my values. And I assume you've had these conversations before. And how do you help people going about if they've identified that their career maybe doesn't align with their values, or if they're interested in finding something that does align with their values more? What's kind of a first step that you would take with someone?
So it's knowing, like you said, it's knowing your values, it's knowing your strengths, and does that align with the company's values or strengths? So that's number one, because who wants to be working towards a mission that they don't believe in or that their values don't align with? So a lot of times companies will have, posted what their mission and what their values are. Do you agree with those? It's not that those values have to be exactly the same as yours, but there cannot be conflict between them. So if at any point you don't believe what that company stands for, then you don't want to work there. So
Gotcha.
The next part is the people you work with. If you have a boss, a manager, someone in authority that you don't believe with how they choose to lead or how they choose to manage, and if it's not an option to get away from that type of leadership to move to another team, or if the company is so small that you're always interacting with that person, that's also a clear sign that, nope, that's not where you want to be, because your light cannot shine in that darkness, because you're constantly going to be compromising your values to try to fit in at somewhere that you aren't meant to fit in at. So it's understanding the company, understanding the type of people there. And I would just say, in order to live in alignment with it, it's just anything that compromises your values, that's what you question. Because when your values are compromised, you can't move in the direction of your vision. You can't move forward with authenticity in who you are.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So making sure that, right, the values align and that you're working with good people. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then, it's also thinking about, do you enjoy the work? So maybe everything aligns for the company, the people, everything, but are you doing your soul's work? And not everyone has to do that through a career. Some people do their soul's work or their purpose through volunteering or through some sort of side project or whatever it might be, but it's just making sure that you're fulfilling that outlet in some way. So some people choose to do that through their career. Other people choose other avenues, but it's just making sure that it's being fulfilled in some way.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So there's multiple outlets to fill that purpose and just figuring out what works for you. Okay, cool. Well, I want to flip the conversation a bit because, obviously you have a lot of passion about this stuff and it's your life's work. But I assume there was a point in your journey when you started looking inward for yourself? Like, I'm interested in that transition, or what were you doing at the time, or what kind of put you on the journey of falling in love with yourself, and what did that look like for you?
That's an excellent question. First of all, I'm going to put the disclaimer out there. I'm not perfect. So there are days I do not like myself. But I don't view it as, once you do all the work, then you're perfect. You'll never hit any obstacles. It's just a matter of how quickly do you recognize when you're out of alignment or when something isn't working, so that you can flip the switch and come back home. So it's coming back to your center, coming back to what you value. So just for anyone listening, not that you're ever going to be perfect, but it's just understanding yourself enough to say, oh, my response time is so much quicker because I recognize it didn't take me a week. It took me an hour to realize something's not right. I need to flip the switch and do whatever it is to get back on track.
Gotcha.
But I would say, back to earliest time, I love Oprah.
Who doesn't?
I started watching her when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And I would watch her every day after school. And then it was high school, and graduating high school, I got voted to be the next Oprah in our senior class.
Nice.
and then after that is when I really got into personal growth, self-help in college. So I never really enjoyed reading at all until I found the self-help section. And that's when I started loving diving into some of the concepts and strategies. I came across Tony Robbins at that time at the beginning of college. And that's when I really started loving all this work and applying it to myself, and then getting to the point of wanting to do this all the time and help other people do this work too.
Cool. So what was your first job out of college? What'd you start with?
Nothing related to this.
Okay.
So when I first graduated college, not everyone in Minnesota, but a lot of people went to work at Target corporate.
Okay.
So
my mom worked there for 25 years. So
yeah. So I was there, and it was there that I was working on the women's ready to wear apparel team, and in merchandising, so buying, inventory planning, all of that. And my lead product designer, I remember having a meeting with her, one of the leads in that area, and she basically ended up coaching me without me knowing what coaching was. And then her and I got talking and more about it and more about coaching. And she was sharing all about this training that she had gone through. And I was like, I need to know more about this. And then she's like, well, if you're so interested, she's like, I highly recommend you get a coach. And I was like, duh, why didn't I think of that? It's you have to be able to experience it and what is actually happening as the client to see if it's something that's a good fit. And then after that, while I was still at Target, I had decided to go through the CTI coactive coaching training program. And then I've continued every year since. So maybe it was a year and a half, 2 years ago, I did some coaching training with Tony Robbins and his company, and just learning different techniques and different things that work to find your own style. So yeah. That's the biggest, all the details in a big nutshell, because I could go on for hours about that.
Yeah. Cool. So I just want to know about the jump, right? So you're working at Target and now you're running your own business. Can you give me a little bit about
Yeah.
How did you get from there to here, the transition there? And maybe even, I'm interested always a failure that kind of taught you a lesson on the journey, because I assume there was some failures along the way that kind of pushed you and led you and guided you towards where you are right now.
So I was at Target when I realized that life coaching is what I wanted to do, and started figuring out training and all that. And then in the meantime, I had jumped ship to another company because I wasn't happy with where I was. And I was like, well, while I'm still figuring out this coaching thing, I'm going to at least try to find some peace in another company while I'm doing that. And I didn't enjoy that either. And it's like when you get the Sunday night scaries and you just dread going into work the next day, that's when you're out of alignment too. That should never happen. So that's what I would say is like another sign for that. But while I was at this other company, that's when I started building my business on the side, and started going through more training and figuring out what I want this to look like. And it was hard. It was really hard. I'll say that. I remember the moment I was at a conference, and when I had first started taking on coaching clients, and they had asked, what was it? It was something about being an entrepreneur. And it wasn't until that moment, I had always identified as a life coach. I never had the identification of I'm also a business owner and an entrepreneur. Like
Right.
that, like I remember sitting in the conference like, what?
You're like, dang it.
I have to figure this out. I was just following a passion that I was so zoned in on what I'm doing, and this is my life's work, that I never even took time to think about like the other labels that I now have and the other responsibilities that I now have by following my passion. So that was an interesting moment. And I would say, there are so many things that you learn along that journey, but asking for help is one of the biggest things that I've learned, because I don't know how to do a lot of things. I don't know how to make a website. I don't know how to do like so many behind the scenes technical things. And it's about knowing that everything is figure outable. So whether it's you and like utilizing your resources or using your network or whatever that might be, figuring out a solution, nothing is impossible. I literally thought that it was impossible for me to figure out how to do a website. Like I remember that being my biggest hurdle. When I first started, I was like, what, do I even need a website? And then figuring it out, like I figured it out, and it took a lot of hours. That's for sure. But everything's impossible until you do it. That's what I always say. So it's like the fact that we have electricity, that we have light right now. It was impossible until someone did it. Someone going to the moon. It's impossible until someone does it. So that's what I always have to remind myself with.
Yeah, I mean that's just so true and such a powerful lesson to hear. So my next questions are kind of a two-parter, but if you had to define what your dream life looks like for yourself, what would you say? And also, since we've talked a lot about values, what would you say that your most important values are in your life?
Okay.
You could just,
I love your questions. These are great because, it's the conversations that people don't normally get into, but it's the stuff that matters. So I love the questions that you're asking. That's really insightful.
Well, good.
An extraordinary life, I think this changes, as you grow and evolve. I think the definition for yourself will change. But for me, it's all about having meaningful moments. So really, truly connecting and being present with people, I think that leads to an extraordinary life. Living in alignment with your purpose and your values. And then I would say the third thing that goes along with that is growing, like just in any way, like experiencing new things, and continuing to grow and develop. And I'd say a fourth thing I would add in there too, contributing in some way. So giving back. I think that leads to having a deeper sense of appreciation for things around you. So I would say those four things for me lead to an extraordinary life.
Cool. Yeah, I like the first one. I like all of them, but the first one you said like being present, like just being there for the moments and making your moments meaningful. That one resonated a lot with me. Cool. Yeah. So then like living to your values, again, going into the part two of the question, what are your values and how do you try to live those out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some of my core values are around like love is one of them. So doing everything you do with love. I always say that whenever someone is hurting or I take that back. Whenever someone shows anger, whenever they're mad, whenever they say something snarky, whenever they are just like kind of edgy, they're hurting in some way. There's some part of them that's hurting. And if you can approach that with love instead of getting defensive or saying something snarky back or whatever it is, or being resentful, that changes everything. So just always having a sense of love for the people, the things, life, all of it. I think that could heal a lot of things in this world, almost everything. If every person just loved one person a little more, like our world would be different. So that's a huge one for me. Another one is, naturally, family and friends, people are one of my biggest values. My family's everything. So they're really good. And then a third one is my faith. So my faith, like having a sense of spirituality, spirit, whatever you call it, for me, it's God. My faith is everything, because when you mention like you might have setbacks, or how do you get through certain things, or what do you learn along the way? Every setback I have, everything that I feel like I've stumbled on, it's always brought me back to God and understanding like I can't do everything on my own. It takes a level of trust. And I feel like it's always when I think I can handle it by myself, or it's like God pulling me back and being like, hold up, you can't do this alone. And just like kind of humbling me in a way. So I would say those are the four biggest. And the last one I would add in that, so I have my values and then I have my core desired feelings, which are a little different.
Okay.
I'm kind of combining them a little bit right now just to make it easier for people.
It's no rules.
So the last one would be curiosity. So I really value being curious and just having that perspective. So when you meet someone, asking questions, getting to know them, or being curious about what's around you, and then being curious about people, like, which is exactly what you do on this podcast. It's getting to know other people and what makes them who they are, because you learn more about yourself, you learn more about others, and it opens up new perspectives that then help you grow. So I would say curiosity is the other one.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for sharing those. Well, I'm being mindful of our time, so I want to ask a few final questions before we wrap up here. But this is kind of a specific question, just to I'm curious if you have any habits, or maybe just one habit that you kind of try to follow or stick to that you feel like has just really helped you, maybe just even in the last year or so.
Ooh. Okay, so I'm gonna say two.
Okay.
So the first one is my morning routine is everything. So I love having, I spend time in my planner, really setting the intentions for the day. I do gratitude through that too. What am I grateful for? All of that. And then within my morning routine is also meditation. So that has changed everything for me. Just in having a fresh mindset, a clear mindset going into everything. And then I do some sort of personal growth development in the morning. So whether I multitask it. So as I'm getting ready, if I'm listening to a YouTube video interview of some sort, listening to a podcast, listening to a book on audio, that's what I do every single day, just to get yourself ready, get your mindset ready for the day. And it strengthens you, it helps you stay more in this positive mind frame, or the everything's figure outable mind frame, instead of going into why did this happen to me, instead of going into victim mode or blame mode throughout the day. So that's number one. Number two, with sticking to habits that help me achieve what I want, or go stay accountable to what I want. I love setting out what my vision is and setting goals that really support that vision, and understanding why they're important. But then in order to stick to them, I put them in a spreadsheet and I review those every day. And some of them, it's literally checking off, like, did I do this today? But some of those that are daily goals or whatever that might be, it's just reviewing what my goals are every day. Because if you don't review them, you forget about them. And that's when everyone fails at their goals, because they aren't intentionally being mindful of them and staying connected to them on a daily basis. So that's 1 and 2.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah, it sounds like you have some cool meditation and gratitude practices. And I've been doing that a bit in my life. So I feel like I have so many things I want to ask about that, but we'll save that for next time.
All right. Yeah.
So I'll let you kind of leave a parting message. If you could kind of just one thing on your mind based off our conversation, or what you would want listeners to sort of take away from this conversation we had today.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so good. Can I say a couple things?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So the first thing I would ask you is a question that some of you have maybe heard of this before. I actually started doing this way back when I first started coaching training. And I had someone ask me this question about, if you had a billboard and you could write anything on that billboard that people saw when they were driving in traffic, like rush hour, and that was the only thing that they got to stare at, what is your message that you want to share with the world? And I would just ask everyone listening to answer that question, because knowing what you value and what your purpose is so important. And that is an easy way that gives you a glimpse into what you would want that to say. And mine says love more, which goes into my values. If everyone could just love more and show more love, I think that would make everything different. And then the second piece of that is, I would just say that you matter. So everyone listening to this right now, you matter. You have a purpose, you have a life, you matter, you have value. You are enough. You are who you are meant to be. It's just a matter of you figuring out what that is.
All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the episode with Amanda Beilke. The call to action is regarding values. We talked a lot about values and how they can be a driving force for your life, a compass or a GPS that steers your car of life to the places that you want to go. And so my challenge and my call to action would be to really figure out, what are your guiding